So hi everyone, my name is Lizette Deanda, and I will be presenting to you my action research project for National University, course CED 637. The title of my study is The Effects of Positive Reinforcement for Middle School Children or Students with ADHD or Behavioral Problems. So I'll be going over the problem I observed, what the literature says, the intervention that I implemented, how I collected data, how I analyzed the data, and implications for future research. So I did my observation in a Read 180 fundamentals class, so that means that all the students in the classroom have a individualized education plan. And what I saw was that there is a lot of off-task and disruptive behavior, and with that, the students are not engaged academically. They're not reading when they're supposed to be reading because they're distracted. And the question that guided my study is how will teaching social skills to students with ADHD and or other behavioral problems using positive reinforcement affect their off-task behavior? So what the literature says, that 5.6 and 7.9% of children are diagnosed with ADHD in the state of California. It says that teachers lack training in ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And with the survey, the teachers said that they had little or no training, and special education teachers had more knowledge than the general ed teachers. However, all the teachers need education on ADHD because a study says that there is at least one student with ADHD for every class. This is a few direct quotes from some of these sources that I read while I was doing my research. It says, in some cases, the effects of consequence-based interventions are equivalent to those found for psychostimulant medication. So that's why I wanted to do a student-based intervention, since it could have the same effect as a medication. And also, not all the students take medication, so we should have some sort of intervention in schools. The next one, rewards should be individualized based on student preferences and interests. So since I'm doing positive reinforcement, I needed to choose a reward that would motivate the student to change their behavior. And the next one says that it's hypothesized that students with ADHD who successfully engage in goal-directed behavior and commitment will demonstrate positive academic outcomes. So my first goal was just to reduce their off-task and disruptive behavior. Social skills. So first, before reducing the off-task behavior, I needed to first let the students know what behavior they were exhibiting. So I introduced to them the Superflex Unthinkable Characters by Michelle Garcia Winner. There is over 30 different characters, but I picked 3 for the problems that we saw in this particular classroom. She usually works with kids that have cognitive social deficits. So the setting, as I mentioned earlier, was in a Read 180 class. There's about 20 students, and I selected 4 for the study. The teacher and I discussed which students we felt were the most disruptive, off-task, and just constantly, not distracted, not focused. And one of the students was a female, the other 3 were male students. The students were unaware that they were going to be studied, so I told all the students in the classroom that we were going to be trying something new, and everyone was going to have the same treatment, so they didn't know who I was actually studying. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the rewards. Because of time and money, and I didn't want to single out any students, I asked the kids what they would want as a reward, and they didn't really want candy or like anything really hands-on. They wanted free time. So we told them that we would give them some free time if they met their goal. So I guess I should explain the Read 180 class. So there's rotations, there is a computer group, there is a small group with a teacher, and a reading group. So during the reading group, the students are sat at their desks and they read silently. And on the computer, they're doing a reading program, practicing their comprehension, practicing reading aloud on a speaker. And during the small group, they do work with the teacher from a book, also related to reading and comprehension. And so for this intervention, I sat with the kids in the small group and I went through each of these characters. And it's a little bit blurry, but this is a brain eater. So the brain eater is the one that distracts you. You could be distracted by a picture on the wall or something other not related to what the teacher is talking about. And the next one is the topic twister. The topic twister is the student that goes off on a tangent. So they bring up things that are irrelevant, have nothing to do with the topic. And if you notice, I don't know if you can see it, but it says what you can do to defeat topic twister. So after going over each of these characters, we discuss what they can do to try to defeat that problem. And then there's Energy Harry. So Energy Harry has a lot of energy, can't sit still, fidgets, has trouble concentrating. So what can you do to defeat Energy Harry? Use whole body listening. Let's see. And then after we went over thoroughly all of the characters, I gave them this worksheet, which is not projected very well, but I'll read to you one of the scenarios. A student is on the computer playing with the headset and punching the buttons on the keyboard when she should be listening patiently and typing the words the program tells her to. This student has problems sitting calmly or still, which is an example of which unthinkable character. And this student answered correctly. They put Energy Harry. So all the students, after we read all the cards, they were able to answer these questions correctly. So for data collection, before I began any intervention, I took baseline data. So for the 4 students that I was observing, I basically in 10-minute intervals just checked how often they were off task. And after that, I made behavioral cards. So during the intervention, they had the card, and so I marked their cards with little abbreviations, letting them know which character they were acting out. And then the correlation graphs, at the end I plotted the numbers onto graphs and I analyzed if there was a trend or not. So this is an example. I wish I could take the light off, but this is an example of when I did my observations. There's 10 boxes here, so each box represents 1 minute. And what I did was I set the timer. So if within 1 minute the student did not, make a disruption in noise or anything, then I would leave it blank. However, if within the minute they did do something, then I would just put a check. And so if you see 8 checks, it doesn't mean that they were disrupted 8 times. It just means that they were only focused for 2 minutes of the 10 minutes. And on the side, I would make notes, because if the data was inconsistent and they were, say more typically they were off task, but one day they were on task, then I would make a note, and maybe there was nobody sitting next to that student, so that's why they were on task. And then I also checked here, I have reading, computers, or a small group, so I would check which group they were in when I did that observation. And then next are the behavioral cards. This is during intervention. So the students were never unaware when I was observing them during baseline. However, when we started the behavioral intervention, after they learned about all the characters, I gave them a behavioral card. And at the bottom, I have a small picture of each character. B for Brain Eater, E for Energy Fairy, and T for Topic Twister. And then underneath is a short description of what that character is like. So I put the student's name here, I put the date here, and then I would put, say, they're a computers group and they were being a brain eater, so I put BB or whatever it is that they were, if they were being off task. And the way that we gave them a reward was, since there are 3 groups, there's reading, there's computers, and there's small group, they had to have no disruptions for each group. And what I would do is I put like 3 stars, letting me know that they acted appropriately in all 3 groups. And the easiest way the teacher wanted to reward them was to give them 10 minutes of free time during reading time, which kind of sounds, why would you take away the reading? But before I started this intervention, some of these kids weren't reading anything for the whole 25 minutes that they were supposed to be reading. Some kids only read maybe 1 or 2 pages in the whole 25 minutes. But after we gave them something to motivate them, once they really wanted free time, and the teacher allowed for them to play a game on the computer during that free time, as long as they were not disruptive to the other students, they actually started to read. So during reading time, they were reading for those 10 minutes instead of wasting the whole 25 minutes. So that was kind of the benefit from that. What's the next part? Okay, so I made up names for the students just to protect their identity. So the first student, Molly, as you can see, okay, so we have baseline data, and then this is during intervention. So for the 10-minute interval, we have 9, 8, 6, 6. And then over here, as you can see, the highest was only a 2, and there's a lot of zeros, which means that she was on task, for most of the time. Same thing with Robert. This is the baseline, and this is the intervention. The scores are higher over here, so more disruptions, and then less during intervention. Same thing with Frankie. There's sometimes it looks inconsistent, but you can clearly see that it kind of drops over here during intervention. And Tim, it looks similar to Robert's graph. So, data analysis. So, all those graphs, we could all say, had somewhat of a downward trend. They started with a lot of disruptions, and then they kind of went down, and we call that a negative correlation. So with the intervention, the disruptions did decrease. And then I looked at the median value for both the baseline and the intervention phases. So for Molly, for example, if I put these in order from least to greatest, her median for baseline was 7. And for intervention, it was 0. So that was a huge difference for her. And Robert, for his baseline, the median value was 4, also 0 for intervention. Frankie was 2.5 for the baseline, and intervention 0. And lastly, Tim had a baseline median value of 3, and for intervention it was 0. So for all of them, the median value for during intervention was 0 disruptions. So some of them were more significant than others, but we did see a reduction. Implementation of intervention decreased the disruptions in off-task behavior. Implications, well, we can see that positive reinforcement does work. One thing that I think that maybe some of the reasons why we have a lot of disruptions is because there's a shortage of instructional assistants for special education. So for this class of 20 students, there's only one IAA and the teacher. So when the teacher is working with a small group and the IAA is working with the student on their reading, nobody's really paying attention to the kids on the computers. So they can easily be, listening to music or playing a game, and we wouldn't even know. So I think that is one of the problems, is that we don't have enough IAs. And to further this study, I was thinking that maybe, because we don't want to reward the kids, like they should behave because they should in class. So this was just to get them started on just reducing the disruptions, like give them something, motivate them to reduce that. But then I think for the future, maybe we could test if the students, if they're more academically engaged because there's less disruptions, then they will do better in class, and as a result they'll feel good about it. So at that point we could replace the reward with praise, so they should feel good about doing good. And possibly at that point we can test, see how if they're turning in more assignments, if they're doing better on their tests. But this was just to begin to reduce the off-task behavior. And also with special ed kids, I wasn't sure how the positive reinforcement would work, just because if they have ADHD, it's like a problem with the brain, it's attention deficit, so I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. We know that it works for, most people, but the most important thing is that you're using something that really motivates them. So, I don't know if I mentioned earlier in the presentation, but the 4 students that I selected, 3 of them had ADHD according to their IEPs, and one of them just had a lot of behavioral issues in class. It didn't say that they had ADHD in their IEP, but they had characteristics of it. And now I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. I have evaluations that I need you guys to fill out, and please be honest, because I need it for, I need to turn them in, and they're supposed to help me, so. I have pens, and then if there's anything, I don't know if you want me to project anything up while you fill this out. Thank you.